Hi, welcome to this Facebook Live. My name is Dr. David Purves, and I'm talking about the algorithm of depression. So please join me. If you join me online, please leave a comment, ask a question, send me a whatever. Hi, Louise, welcome. I have noticed over many years of working with clients, there are definite patterns. And I was doing some research on some of the more core characteristics of depression. And I came up with this notion of the algorithm of depression because it's a set of rules. Right? A rule is this, right? If you do this, you get this outcome. With the algorithm of depression, if you do this, you will get that outcome. Hi, Julian. And thanks for waving. Wave back at you. Now, everybody takes their own problems personally, because of course we do, right? But if we can identify the core characteristics that are like they span the whole thing, right? They're not unique to each individual, then we can say, well, actually, hang on, this is a process. It's a fairly well-defined process. It's common to virtually all people that have a particular problem. And today we're talking about depression. And therefore, if we knew how to resolve that process, we know how to resolve, a good chunk of the depression. And that's what we're talking about today. Hi, Vanessa. We're talking about figuring out those core fundamentals that always exist with something like depression, and then we do something about them. And these are rules, right? If you do this, you will get that outcome. So if you do, if you do the opposite, or if you change it, then you get a better outcome. So rules go both ways, right? It's like a line with an arrow at each end. So we're talking about the algorithm of depression. Now, obviously depression and, well, let me just say that depression and anxiety typically are best friends. It's quite common to see depression and anxiety together. It's much rarer to see depression and anxiety differently, right? So a lot of the things that we talk about when we talk about depression, we could also apply to some extent, well, actually to a large extent, to anxiety. So we're also going to do that. Okay, so depression does not exist in a vacuum, okay? So there is an environmental setup. And the environmental setup might be, our upbringing, our history. It might be our work experience. It might be our relationship experience. It might be injury or accident. It might be pervasive negative memories. It might be lots of different things, but it does not exist in isolation. And it persists also from ongoing processes at work or in relationships. So for instance, a critical spouse or a sort of an emotionally absent spouse, stress at work, difficult, let's call it difficult childhood experiences that have strong memories. These all have a role to play. And obviously it's different for everyone, but they all have a role to play. So let's jump in and talk about the algorithm of depression. Now, I've created a PDF that goes with this, and I'm also going to talk about a case. And this is a case of a gentleman called Nick, who I met and I worked it out 17 years ago. Unfortunately, I kept good notes at the time, so I'm going to talk about a case, and it really fits into this algorithm of depression really rather well. Now, there's a PDF that goes with this. The PDF also talks about the case, and it also describes what to do about these rules. So it gives you kind of a little workbook that you can use to work through. Now, if you already have access to the Panic Pit Stop program, you'll find a simpler version of this workbook in episode 6, The Vicious Flower of Depression, and you'll find it as a PDF like 016. But I'm going to put this new one up as well with this video, so it'll give you a little bit more background. So if you already have the programs, I've got you covered. Now, here's the first one, and it's one that you may have heard me speak about before, but everything feels really personal as we start to descend down into poorer mental health, right? And it really feels like what we feel just accurately reflects the world in which we move around and we live, right? It feels as if we're somehow, if I feel bad about myself, it's because I am bad. If I feel worthless, it's because I have no worth. If I feel emotional, it's because I'm vulnerable. And so, we have a real misinterpretation of the role of feelings. Feelings give color to life and they give color to what we do, but they're not necessarily accurate representations of the world. Now, as you know, I like to make a distinction between the external world, which would be my bookcases behind, and the internal world, which is in here. The external world and the internal world are not the same. Hi, Martina. The internal world is entirely subjective. The external world, as it exists, is entirely objective. Now, the external world has to get into my internal world for me to be able to manipulate it and understand it. Because as you know, all of the information that comes into your brain is encoded. So you might think that you're seeing me and you might see my bookcases behind, but you're actually seeing photons that are being interpreted by your brain. So there's a huge amount of interpretation that your brain does in internal reality. And that's the problem that we have to struggle with when we're talking about the algorithm. I'm obviously going to have difficulty with that word, the algorithm of depression, because our interpretation is quite easily biased. So one of the ways that it gets biased, and the first one then, is that feelings are not facts. And we have to start to think about and remember that feelings are not facts. Now, to be able to remember that starts to give us a little bit of distance between how we experience the world and how we think about the world. If there's no distance between them, it's really hard to be objective, and it's really hard to sort of understand what's happening, but just a little bit of distance really gives us a sense of power. The second rule that we're talking about is simply this, right? Automatic negative thoughts. And we are really rather good at sort of accepting the negative bias that automatic negative thoughts kind of bring to us, right? We can use faulty thinking, we can use assumptions, we can use faulty interpretations. And because they're automatic and they're so quick and we barely notice them, it's always the case that automatic negative thoughts are a key component of both depression and anxiety and many other problems as well. But if we think about this, if we know how to deal with automatic negative thoughts, or if we've got some tools and strategies, then we can take them out of the algorithm. The second rule, and I'm saying rule because an algorithm is really a set of rules. So if you have depression, you have to have automatic negative thoughts. If you have depression, you have to have negative core beliefs about yourself. Now, the way it works is this. We all hold kind of deep beliefs about ourselves. And because they're subjective and they're internal, right? We're never quite sure whether what we believe about ourselves is sort of completely true or not. We're always a bit unsure of whether we're this or we're that. And there's always that sort of balance, right, between, I'm competent, I'm not competent. I'm clever, I'm not clever. I'm a failure, I'm not a failure, And if you have a negative belief, a core negative belief, and it's often core negative beliefs are around themes of loss, defeat, failure, worthlessness, and unlovability. And so if you can kind of go, yeah, I'll put my hand out to any of those, these are our core beliefs, right? Now, because they're sort of balanced, right? I mean, who could say that they're unlovable? And yet we feel unlovable. Who could say that they're worthless? And yet we feel worthless. So these negative ideas are on a sort of a balance, they teeter. And certain environmental experiences, such as stress at work, such as bullying, such as criticism, can just like make one side go, oh, yeah, I am a failure. And that delicate balance is what we struggle with. And that's what we struggle to get back, of course. Anyway, environmental circumstances can trigger core beliefs, core negative beliefs you have about yourself. And then that activates a feedback loop that perpetuates. And that's the problem with these rules, right? They're self-perpetuating, because as you start to feel, let's say, more of a failure because you've been criticized or something at work or criticized at home, as you come to feel more of a failure, your mood goes down. It kind of entrains a whole series of other programs that I'll talk about, other rules which I'll talk about, and that then creates a self-perpetuating system. Now, if you believe that what you feel is true, you just would go, I'm useless, I'm a failure. Then you suffer all the consequences, you try all the sort of the unhelpful kind of coping strategies, but you believe your experience is true. And my mission in a sense is to help you to recognize that you may feel depressed and you may feel low and you may feel like a failure, but it doesn't necessarily make it true, right? We test our internal reality against external reality. So we've got rule 1, we believe what we feel. Rule 2, automatic negative thoughts are always present and they're always unhelpful. And rule 3, we have negative core beliefs that get triggered by external events. Now, we always have an element of rumination and self-attack when we're talking about depression. Now, rumination basically is the thing that we tackled in the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge. It's looking back and saying, why did that happen? Do these people not like me? What have I done wrong? What could I have done differently? It's looking back from a position of being negatively biased against yourself and kind of wondering whether you could have done something different to have affected a different outcome. And it's a mistake because, of course, you can't change the past, but it's also a mistake because the reason you're ruminating is wrong. Now, rumination, very common, but it's not too difficult to kind of tackle. The other common element is being self-critical and being sort of really brutal to yourself, right? Oh, I'm useless, I'm stupid, I'm no good. Those self-attacking characteristics are really unhelpful. And of course, the more you attack yourself, the harder it is to maintain a sort of a useful kind of mood, if you like. Okay. Now, the next one, the next rule is withdrawal and avoidance. If you felt bad about yourself, it makes sense that you're going to kind of not going to want to put yourself out there simply because what's the point, right? If you feel bad about yourself and you believe that what you feel is true, then if you're a horrible person, if you're a failure, if you're unlovable, then no one's going to want to be with you. So you withdraw. And as you withdraw, you lose opportunities to disconfirm how you feel about yourself. You lose opportunities for the external world to recalibrate your internal world. But likewise, you avoid doing stuff. You want to you avoid going out. You reduce your social activity. You reduce your contact with friends. You reduce lots of stuff. I mean, it can get so bad that you can reduce your life to the size of your bedroom or the house. Some people don't go out much, and that's basically withdrawal and avoidance. The next rule is unhelpful behavior. Now, this brings us to your strategies for trying to resolve your problem. Now, if you thought that you were a failure, or if you thought you were unlovable, or if you thought you were unpopular, you would tend to obviously withdraw, etc. And so an unhelpful behavior in that context is to medicate yourself. Because if you feel horrible and miserable and you're not doing anything, what you're going to do at home, etc. So excessive drink, excessive drugs, even smoking cigarettes to some extent, inappropriate relationships, dependence, over exercising, all sorts of different things. I've known a number of people over the years who've used excessive exercise as a strategy to make themselves feel better. The trouble with that is, of course, if you exercise excessively, you tend to get injured, and then all of a sudden, the one strategy that you have to feel good, excessive exercise, is now taken from you. And so you have to find some other way of doing it, which of course, it's a bit of a one-trick pony, that one. And the final rule really is that depression kind of shuts the whole system down. You have a loss of motivation. You have what's called anhedonia, which is a loss of pleasure in things. You have numbness. You have insomnia. You have loss of appetite. You've got tiredness, loss of libido generally, feeling of slowness. It affects the whole of your system. And of course, when you start to pay attention to what your system feels like, and then you start to go, oh gosh, I feel low, I can't do anything, I feel hopeless, I feel helpless. It all becomes a kind of a burden where you're kind of enveloped in a sort of a dark cloud, and there's nothing, it feels like there's nothing you can do about it. So I've gone through 8 rules, and these form the algorithm of depression. Now, it's not necessarily the case that every person who's depressed will use all of these 8 rules, but I'm going to gamble, right? I'm going to say they do. It might be It might be that some people don't do unhelpful behaviors, but you know, probably there will be some unhelpful behaviors. And I have to say, and this might seem like a strange thing to say, I have never ever, in my recollection anyway, I've never ever seen a client who came to see me for help because of the problem that's defined. They came because their strategy, their tools, what they were trying to do to resolve it, caused more problems than the thing itself. So for instance, if someone came to see me for depression, they wouldn't actually come for depression, although that's the label. What they come with, the problem they come with, is that they can't go out and they can't meet people, and so they feel terribly lonely. Or they can't communicate with people, and so they feel terribly alone and uncared for. And so the strategy that depression causes usually is the thing that gets your attention. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about a case. Now, I met this chap, as I said, I think earlier on, about, yes, I'll say 17 years ago. And this case really fits with the kind of algorithm of depression. Now, when I met Nick, he was 42, and he'd been married for quite a long time, I think like 25 years. And he typically held dead-end jobs. And his current job was dead-end. And what had really brought him into therapy was that he was being bullied at work. People were calling him names, because actually he was extremely overweight, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, Nick's upbringing was emotionally withholding, which meant that he never ever got cuddled by his mum or his dad that he could remember. His mum was still alive. She was cold and withholding, and they didn't have a close relationship. He had one brother. They didn't have a close relationship, didn't have anything to do with each other, and he thought his brother also had problems. His father had been quite military, Air Force, and very kind of left, right. And again, not emotionally connected at all, and he died. Although he actually idolized his father and he denigrated himself. So he grew up in a really cold environment, and his wife and he were distant. They didn't talk about anything. They hadn't had a meaningful relationship for many years. They had no sex life for years, and it's like he's recreating his early childhood in a sense. His daughter at the time was having problems at school. He had sleep apnea. His depression was severe. It was sort of, I defined it as a severe clinical depression, and he described his depression as he's indecisive. He had a loss of confidence. He's panicky and anxious. He's feeling like he can't cope with pressure, poor concentration, poor memory, loss of energy, and he struggled to get to work. And he was binge eating every night. So every night he'd absolutely eat as much as he possibly could until he felt completely stuffed and bloated. And if he felt like there was any gap at all, he'd continue to eat more. And that contributed, of course, to him being very overweight. And then he was sleeping so much that sometimes he became suicidal because of the quantity of sleep he was having. And sleep was, of course, one of his escape routines, really. So I'm going to apply the algorithm of depression to Nick. So Nick believed all of his emotions were accurate reflections of who he was. And he was actually a very sensitive man. He was easily made to feel bad. And any comment, or like a bullying comment, or someone called him a name, or any kind of slight or kind of insult made him feel really bad about himself. So he had no sense of like, they're doing that because they're mean. He would say, they're doing it because it's like true, right? It reflects who I am. And he just seemed to believe what people told him. And so he had no sort of sense of protection. He lived what I would say was a loveless life, and yet he was a very loving man, or he wanted to be a loving man. And a lot of what he did seemed to me to be designed to kind of get people to regard him. So he would never say no, he would never argue, he was conflict averse, and he wanted people to kind of like accept him and love him, but he didn't know how really, because it was only when his daughter was about 15 that he actually managed to cuddle her, and he felt really emotional when he told me that story. So you can see that he's actually quite alienated from himself. So he wants something, and it's like a gnawing hole that he fills with food, but he can't seem to get it because he doesn't know how to get it. So Nick's automatic negative thoughts were, I'm a failure at everything, people treat me as an idiot, and things will go wrong. His core beliefs were that he has no human value. He believed that he was never destined to make anything of himself, and he could not possibly defend himself from any form of attack. So he felt constantly vulnerable, and he believed he didn't deserve to be loved, although he was always trying to be loved and at least to please other people. He had to do everything perfectly, and he couldn't tolerate criticism. And his big thing was that he thought he was a failure, and he feared failing. So he put a huge amount of effort into doing everything as well as he possibly could. The curious thing was that he always ended up changing jobs a lot. He was always made redundant, and then whenever he was made redundant, he put a lot of effort into getting something, and then he managed to get something. As soon as he got something, he started to feel low in confidence. And in fact, he had this fear that if he had to take a day off work, he lost confidence that he would know what to do when he got back. So actually it was really, really difficult for him. He deliberately, his rumination and self-attack, he deliberately didn't push himself forward in any area of his life. So he would approach life as if he was completely vulnerable. He put himself down, and he made himself the butt of jokes. He didn't stand up for himself, and hence he was, prone to being bullied. And he'd rather accept the blame for something he didn't do than accept praise for something that he did do. So it was rather a strange situation. So very low self-esteem, and always close to tears, always sort of teetering on the close to tears. Withdrawal and avoidance. He and his wife barely talked. They had no intimate life for many years. And he felt vulnerable and rejected. And he knew he's being paid far below his value, but he couldn't speak up. To fill the hole inside of him, he binge ate until he was bloated. He's very overweight. And if he felt low, he'd retreat to his bed for the whole weekend. And I have to say that, he wasn't able to replenish himself emotionally. It seemed like he depleted himself, but he wasn't able to fill himself up with good feelings because he's running all of these negative programs in here. And he let mood and emotions, Nick let fear direct him. He was dependent. He was completely dependent on what other people said to him as to whether he felt good about himself or otherwise, and therefore he had no emotional control. And people would call him fat, and he felt hurt. So that's a sort of a really, I think, a fairly good example of the algorithm of depression applying itself, or it applies to Nick. Now, what I've done is I've actually worked out the algorithm of depression for Nick, and I've worked it out as an example, and I've also put together a PDF where you can see what I've done for Nick, and actually his treatment actually lasted for about 10 hours altogether, and he went from severe depression to just above one point above cured, which is on the particular question I was using. So he was 15 and he's 14, he needs to be 30 to be cured. So he made great things. The trouble is, at the end of his case, at the end of our time together, his wife told him that she was absolutely adamant, never going to be any more intimacy. And he wasn't very old, and it seemed like a long thing, and he couldn't quite figure out how to resolve that, although they were talking better. Anyway, I've done this PDF, and what I thought I would do is, just to make it sensible, I thought that I would send it to anybody who wants it. So you have the algorithm of depression, you have the worked example, and you have another example, you have another sheet where you can work through your stuff and see if the algorithm of depression applies to you. So anyone who wants that, just email me at panicpitstop100@gmail.com, and I will send it through to you. And also, because we've identified the 7 absolutely 4 fundamental characteristics, rules actually, for depression, which I'm calling the algorithm of depression, because we've identified these, I hope you recognize that what it means is that these are common processes. These apply to everybody, virtually everybody anyway. who suffers from depression and, I have to say, anxiety. And that means that these are really well understood. You know, depression might be a mystery to the sufferer because, of course, they don't, you know, you're in it, and of course it's hard to see it. But objectively, to CBT therapists and you know, psychologists all over the place, you know, we say, well, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. You go, oh yeah, okay. And that's what I do when I see clients. These are the problems, and this is what we need to do to resolve it. Oh yeah, okay. It's nice to see it written out, because it just was an overwhelming sense of feelings for me. Okay, yeah, that's how it is. So if you email me at panicpitstop100@gmail.com, I'll send you the PDF for this this Facebook Live with a worked example, and also with some space that you can work your own examples out. Now, as you start to challenge these rules, as you start to reverse them, all of a sudden you start to feel better and you start to get more control. Now, the real killer with this is these rules are self-perpetuating. So once you start on the path of unhelpful behavior tends to perpetuate itself, and you have to break that that chain, that link. Otherwise, you know, nothing can happen. Likewise with core beliefs. If you accept your negative core beliefs to be true, or if you let them influence your life and don't even recognize them, what can change? Likewise, withdrawal and avoidance, right? If you withdraw from stuff and you avoid stuff, what can change? So all of these, there are 7 rules that I've got in the algorithm of depression, and they're virtually all self-perpetuating feedback loops, and every one of them has to be cut, has to be changed, and they can only be changed by a challenge, right? They can only be changed by a cut, a challenge, by doing something different. Otherwise, the system perpetuates. So, for instance, if you were to say to me, well, I can't go out because, yeah, I just never go out. Okay, I'll say, okay. Well, if you never go out, you never have an opportunity to see that the world itself is not nearly as bad as your internal representation of the world makes you believe. And if you never go out and if you never challenge it, well, you know, that's going to be a system that carries on perpetuating and perpetuating. So, eating and shopping. I guess these are unhelpful behaviors, eating and shopping. But at least you're going to the shops and you're eating and shopping outside. That's a good thing. So, if you have any questions, please quickly shoot them through to me. And if you want the algorithm of depression as a PDF with a worked case example and a place for you to work it out yourself, please email me at panicpitstop100@gmail.com. Now, the other thing is, last week I did the webinar, and the technical issues got away from me, I'm afraid. And so some of you will have seen the recorded version of the webinar, but there was an offer attached to that, and the offer is this: if you want to change depression, and it's entirely changeable, if you want to get rid of depression, if you want to take it out of your life, then you need to use an active self-help CBT system to cut the processes that constantly create depression. Now, as I've said before, problems exist and persist in the absence of an alternative. The algorithm of depression tells you what the problem is. It tells you why you are suffering from depression. The reason being you're running some of these rules, right? That's the problem. Now, you need an alternative to cut these feedback loops and to make these programs diminish so that you're free of depression. And you get to do that through using both Panic Pit Stop and Mood Control, and they're all in the Dr. Purves, the fantastic Dr. Purves .online CBT programs. Now, I want you to be able to get access to those. And so I want to kind of reduce the barrier to access. So to get access to all of the CBT, the active self-help CBT programs, which I have to say is the largest set of active self-help CBT programs in the world, it is £1. £1. Now, if you have any interest in changing your life and you're not already on my programs, £1 is not is not a barrier that you can't jump over, right? Now, I just want to reflect this back to you. I was looking at some research earlier on today. Like, I'm always interested, what are the things that predict a good outcome for people who struggle with panic, anxiety, etc.? You know, what are the things that make all the difference, right? And here's three things that make all the difference. The difference, and this is talking about resistant depression, treatment-resistant depression. These are the three things that make all the difference. The first one is a really good case conceptualization, and that means that the client and the therapist understand what the problem is. Now, if you go through panic pit stop and mood control, you clearly understand what the problem is because it is clearly conceptualized. You know exactly what you're working in, and you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. The second one is you have to hope, you have to believe that you can get better. Now, it seems a funny one, doesn't it? But hope is so powerful. If you at least hope that you can get better, you're going to do something. Let's say if you believe that you can get better, you're going to do something. If you don't believe that you can get better, you're not going to do anything. And of course, that falls into the realm of unhelpful behavior, right? If you do not believe that anything can change for you, you're not going to be motivated to do anything, and therefore nothing's going to change. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it becomes another of those feedback loops, right? If you believe and if you hope that you can have a different experience, you'll do something different and you'll have a different experience. If you believe or that you can't have a different experience, you won't do anything. That's the thing that makes a difference in treatment-resistant depression. And the final one is more emotional processing. It's recognizing that your emotions are powerful. They direct what you do. They propel you to do stuff, right? And they're not things to be frightened of. They're not things to avoid. They're not things to like, I can't do it. They're not things to numb down. They're not things to kind of push away. Your emotions are a legitimate, valuable part of you. They're not necessarily accurate, but they're a part of you. And more emotional processing, more ability to recognize what's happening, talk about it, maybe write about it, just recognize the validity of your emotional life is a huge bonus in treating treatment-resistant depression. So those are the three things, right? Understanding what you're working on and doing it. Believing that you can have a different life and therefore being motivated to do it. And just recognizing that, people are complicated and we don't need to be secretive about how we feel, because how you feel is perfectly legitimate and perfectly acceptable. You get all of that by joining Panic Pit Stop and Mood Control. So please take a moment. If you're interested in having a different experience, send me an email at panicpitstop100@gmail.com. I'll send you the PDF of this algorithm of depression, and I'll also send you a link so that you can get a hold of all of the active self-help CBT programs for £1, 50p a week, £1 for the first 2 weeks. So Louise says, if you don't believe, give the course a try and have nothing to lose. And when you see it works, you'll keep practicing the tools and get better. Well, that's nice. Thank you, Louise. Okay, so I'm going to say good evening. I hope you found this interesting. Of course, this will be available on YouTube. And send me an email at panicpitstop100@gmail.com, and I'll send you the full PDF of the algorithm of depression, the case, and a place for you to work out your own algorithm and to start to challenge your own negative thoughts. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen.